My therapist said to record these, said it would help with the sleep. It's 2 in the morning again, and I'm sitting in my study with the lights on because I don't like the dark anymore. 28 years in emergency medicine, and I don't like the dark. That's what this job gave me. I need to talk about Drawer 3. November 14th, 2019. Thursday night, I was 15 years into my run at University Hospital in Louisville. Level 1 Trauma Center, the only one in the region that took the bad ones. I came on at 7, checked the board, 5 patients, a COPD exacerbation in room 2 waiting on a respiratory therapy consult, a kidney stone in room 6 who'd already had 4 milligrams of morphine and was finally quiet, a psych hold in the safe room, 2 fast-track patients, a kid with an ear infection, and a guy who'd sliced his thumb opening a package from Amazon. Bread and butter. Denise was charge nurse. Marcus was on transport. Dr. Pham was the second attending, but he'd called in. His kid had RSV, so I was solo until the nocturnist showed at 11. I poured coffee in the break room. 2 sugars. The pot was burned because it had been sitting since 3 in the afternoon, and nobody on day shift ever makes a fresh one. That's a universal constant in emergency medicine. Bad coffee, and no one takes responsibility for it. At 22:47, the EMS radio crackled. Medic 7, 8 minutes out. 61-year-old male witnessed cardiac arrest at a Shell station on Bardstown Road. Bystander CPR initiated by an off-duty paramedic who happened to be getting gas. First rhythm in the field, asystole. They tubed him in the rig, 7.5 endotracheal tube confirmed with waveform capnography, EAT CO2 of 11. Bilateral breath sounds, 2 large bore IVs, 1 in each AC. First epi given in the field at 22:39. His name was Harold Voss, 61, 5'10", about 220. He'd been paying for gas when he grabbed his chest and went down. Cashier called 911. The off-duty medic started compressions within 90 seconds. Good bystander CPR. It didn't matter. They rolled him into Resus Bay 1 at 22:55. I took over the airway, confirmed tube placement, checked the monitor, asystole across all leads. No fine V-fib hiding in there, just a flat line. We ran the protocol, epinephrine 1 milligram IV push every 3 minutes. After the 3rd round, I added sodium bicarbonate, 50 milliequivalents. Checked the H's and T's. We pulled a point-of-care iStat. Potassium was 5.1, not high enough to explain it. Glucose 142. Calcium was borderline, so I gave a gram of calcium gluconate. Bedside echo showed no cardiac activity, no pericardial effusion, no obvious PE. At minute 22, we got something. Rhythm check showed what looked like organized electrical activity. Slow, wide complexes around 30 a minute. PEA, I checked for a pulse, nothing at the carotid, nothing at the femoral. Pulseless electrical activity. We pushed another epi, ran another liter of saline, the complexes widened, slowed, and then they were gone. Back to asystole. We worked him for 47 minutes total, 7 rounds of epinephrine, bicarb twice, calcium twice. We checked the rhythm every 2 minutes like the algorithm says. Asystole, asystole, asystole. I called it at 23:42. Time of death 23:42. Asystolic arrest, unresponsive to resuscitation. GCS 3. Pupils fixed and dilated bilaterally, 6 millimeters. No spontaneous respirations, no cardiac activity on bedside echo. Does anyone disagree? Nobody disagreed. You do 4,000 codes in your career, and some of them you save and most of them you don't. And Harold Voss was one of the ones you don't. I dictated the chart. Denise called the medical examiner's office, but it was a witnessed natural death, so no ME hold. She called the next of kin, a daughter in Lexington. I heard Denise's end of the conversation through the curtain. She was good at those calls, gentle but clear. I never was. Marcus took the body down at 0015. Basement level, end of the east corridor, past the loading dock. 6 stainless steel refrigerated drawers. He placed Harold Voss in drawer 3, logged it in the book, noted the time, and came back upstairs. I moved on. Ankle fracture in room 9. A college kid who'd stepped off a curb wrong outside a bar on Baxter Avenue. I splinted it, ordered films, wrote for 15 of oxycodone. A regular came in at 01:30 with chest pain that was actually GERD, and I gave her a GI cocktail and sent her home with a PPI prescription. That should have been the end of Harold Voss. At 3:08, my Vocera badge chirped. "Dr. Callahan, this is Marcus in the morgue. I need you to come down here." Marcus had been a transport tech for 11 years. Unflappable. Never called me directly. Never sounded like that. "Drawer 3 is doing something. I think you should just come down." I told Denise I'd be in the basement. She didn't ask why. The elevator opened on B1 and I walked the east corridor. You know that smell. The specific intersection of formaldehyde, industrial disinfectant, and cold air that means you're near the morgue. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one of them flickering in that slow rhythm that maintenance never fixes because nobody complains. Nobody's down here long enough to complain. Marcus was standing outside the morgue door, not inside, outside. That was the first thing I noticed. "The temperature alarm went off at 2:58, he said. "I came down to check it. Figured it was the compressor again. It cycles weird sometimes, but it's not the compressor." The morgue had 6 drawers, 3 on each side. Each one had a small digital readout on the front showing internal temperature. Drawers 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 all read between 3.9 and 4.2 degrees Celsius. Normal operating range. Drawer 3 read 38.4 degrees Celsius. I stared at it. "Did you cycle the unit?" "Twice. Pulled the breaker and reset it." The other drawers dropped back to normal. Drawer 3 kept climbing. I opened the drawer. Harold Voss looked exactly like a man who'd been dead for 3 hours. Dependent lividity on the dorsal surfaces. Early rigor in the jaw and the small joints of the hands. Skin pallid, eyes closed. But when I put my ungloved hand on his forearm, he was warm, not room temperature, warm, like touching a living person with a low-grade fever. I checked for a pulse at the carotid, nothing. Femoral, nothing. Radial. I held it for a full 30 seconds, nothing. I grabbed my penlight and opened his eyelids. Pupils fixed and dilated, 6 millimeters bilateral, no corneal reflex. I pinched his trapezius hard enough to leave a mark. No withdrawal, no response. Harold Voss was dead. I pulled the infrared thermometer from the supply cabinet and aimed it at his forehead. 38.4 degrees Celsius. I checked the axilla. 38.7 degrees Celsius. You know what I told myself? Refrigerator malfunction. The compressor failed. The body didn't cool properly. There's some kind of residual metabolic heat dissipation I'm not remembering from medical school. I told myself that even though I knew that a body placed in a 4-degree drawer at 0:15 does not spontaneously heat to 38.7 degrees 3 hours later. That's not how thermodynamics works. A dead body doesn't generate heat. It loses it. Unless it's not dead. But it was dead. I'd confirmed it myself. Bedside echo, no cardiac activity, pupils fixed, no respirations. Rigor was starting. You don't get rigor in a living person. I drew blood, drawing blood from a dead man in a morgue at 3 a.m. But I needed data. That's what we do. When we don't understand something, we order labs. I accessed the right femoral vein with a 20-gauge needle. The blood came out dark, venous, and it came out too easily. Like there was still pressure in the vessel. Not a lot, just enough to notice. I sent a rainbow. CBC, CMP, lactate, blood cultures ×2, CRP, procalcitonin. The CBC came back at 351. I was standing at the lab printer in the hallway because I didn't want to wait for it to populate in the system. White blood cell count, 23,800. At the time of death, his WBC had been 11,200, normal. Now it was 23,800, with a differential showing 89% neutrophils, 6% bands. Left shift, that's leukocytosis with bandemia. That is an active immune response. That is a body marshaling its defenses against an infection. In a man I'd pronounced dead 4 hours ago. CRP came back at 14.2 milligrams per liter. Procalcitonin, 2.8 nanograms per milliliter. Those aren't residual values. Procalcitonin has a half-life of 25 to 30 hours in a living body. In a dead one, with no hepatic metabolism, no renal clearance, the only way that number goes up is if something is actively producing it, right now, in real time. I checked the core temperature again at 355, 39.1 degrees Celsius. Rising. I called Dr. Anand, the pathology resident on call, told her what I was looking at. That's a labeling error, she said. You mixed up the specimens. I drew the blood myself from a body in drawer 3, a body I pronounced dead at 2342. His immune system is mounting an inflammatory response, his temp is 39.1 and climbing, and I need someone from pathology down here right now. She said she'd page her attending. Harold Voss was dead. His immune system didn't know that. Dr. Kenji Mori arrived at 4:20, pathology attending, 16 years on staff, the kind of man who trusts data over everything. He didn't trust it now. He stood over drawer 3 with his hand on Harold Voss's sternum, and he didn't say anything for about 10 seconds. Then he pulled his hand back and looked at it like he expected it to be burned. The body's been dead for 4.5 hours, I said. Core temp is 39.1 and climbing. CBC shows active leukocytosis with left shift. CRP and procalcitonin are both elevated and rising. That's not possible. I know. He ordered a portable chest x-ray. The tech brought the machine down at 4:30. The films came back at 4:38. Bilateral infiltrates. Patchy ground glass opacities in the lower lobes bilaterally, with early consolidation on the right. The resuscitation films from 23 had shown clear lung fields. In 4.5 hours, this dead man had developed what looked like a bilateral pneumonia. Dr. Mori put on a gown, a face shield, and double gloves. He didn't explain why. He didn't need to. At 4:45, he made a midline incision. I've seen the inside of a lot of bodies, ER thoracotomies, ME rotation during residency. I knew what a dead person's abdomen looked like. This didn't look like that. The peritoneal cavity had fresh inflammatory exudate, serous fluid, slightly cloudy, with visible fibrin strands. Dr. Mori did a touch prep on a glass slide and looked at it under the microscope he'd brought down. Neutrophils. Intact, well-formed, actively degranulating neutrophils. In a body with no circulation, no heartbeat, no mechanism to deliver white blood cells anywhere. These cells are alive, he said. He said it the way you'd say the sky is green. A fact that breaks the world. We sealed the morgue. I called hospital infection control. Within an hour, the body was moved to a negative pressure isolation room on the 4th floor. 3 people in the hospital knew about it, then 5, then 12, because that's how hospitals work. The blood cultures were incubated on standard protocol. 5 days for routine, extended hold for slow growers. On day 6, the bottles flagged positive. The lab ran the isolate through the microscan automated identification system. The result came back, no organism identified. They ran it again, same result. They tried API strips, a different identification method, biochemical rather than automated. No match. The lab director sent it to the Kentucky State Reference Lab. They ran 16S ribosomal RNA sequencing, should identify any bacterial species on Earth. 3 weeks later, the state lab forwarded the specimen to the CDC in Atlanta. I know the response because it was faxed in 2019, and I made a copy before it went into the file. Gram stain morphology inconsistent with known prokaryotic or eukaryotic taxonomy. 16S RNA sequence does not match any entry in the NCBI database. Please confirm specimen is from a human source and that collection protocols were followed. Not bacterial, not fungal, not anything in the database. Growing in the blood of a dead man whose immune system was actively fighting it. I filed the incident report. 22 pages. I included every lab value, every timestamp, every vital sign. But I left out two things. The first, at 3:45, when I leaned close to Harold Voss to check his pupils for the third time, he exhaled. One breath. Not an agonal gasp. I've seen hundreds of those. This was a slow, deliberate exhalation, warm air. I felt it on my cheek. I held my own breath and waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Nothing. No rise of the chest, no second breath, just the one. I checked carotid pulse. Nothing. I checked the monitor we'd attached. Flat line. One breath from a dead man, and then silence. I didn't chart it because I don't know what I'd chart it as. The second thing I left out, I pulled the maintenance logs for drawer 3. The refrigeration alarm had triggered 3 other times in the past 4 years. August 2015, January 2017, October 2018. Different patients each time. Each event was flagged as equipment malfunction, compressor cycling error. Biomedical engineering replaced the compressor after the second event and the thermistor after the third. But when I looked at the temperature curves, really looked at them, all 3 showed the same pattern. Stable at 4 degrees Celsius until approximately 03, then a rapid spike to 38 plus, then gradual return to baseline by 6 cord. Same drawer, same time, same curve, 3 different dead people. I left medicine in 2021, told my partners it was burnout. It wasn't burnout. The CDC sample, the unclassifiable organism cultured from Harold Voss's blood, was destroyed in a laboratory incident at the Atlanta facility in March 2020. A freezer malfunction. When COVID consumed everything that spring, no one reopened the file. No one recultured. No one followed up. Drawer 3 is still in service.